Hey y'all, it's Amanda, and today we're going to talk about how to plan and schedule out your raised beds to get the most growth from them each season. Okay, so I have 8 raised beds in my backyard, in my back garden. 6 of them are lower to the ground, and those are the ones that I constantly rotate and do different things in throughout all of the growing seasons. So what I want to talk about today is raised bed layouts and schedules so that they can grow more crops more often throughout the entire season. And this is something that I've really had to work hard at over the past few years. I used to just put one crop in, and then when that crop died, I was kind of just done. And now that I've learned more over the last decade, I've really figured out how to layer in the crops and get the most I can from the raised beds. So this is for you if you ever feel like your raised beds sit empty half of the year, because that's definitely a struggle and something that I had struggled with in the past. So I'm going to walk you through how I plan out my garden beds so they're always growing something, and whether it's veggies, flowers, or herbs, they're growing all year long. Okay, so we're going to start with a seasonal garden calendar. In Texas Zone 8, we're very lucky. We can garden nearly all year. But to do that successfully, you have to plan around your frost dates and your heat waves. So one of the first things you need to do is obviously determine your grow zone. If you're new to gardening, you can go and look up the USDA grow zone on Google, and you can check it out, and it will show you, put in your zip code, and it'll show you what growing zone you are in. All grow zones are not created equal. And just because I'm a zone 8 here in Texas does not mean that zone 8 in South Carolina is going to be the same whatsoever. Or zone 8, there's actually zone 8s out in Oregon. There's not going to be the same just because it says zone 8. We're still going to have varying frost dates, which means when your first frost is and when your last frost is each year. So once you've determined your zone, you want to go ahead and locate your last frost date. For me, that's typically mid-March. And my first frost date, and that's when, the first of winter, that's for me typically mid-November. So I have roughly 8 months of warm growing time and 4 months of cool season crops. All right, so that's the most important because figuring out that first and last frost date will show you when you can plant things. Very important. All right, so ooh, I got a bug bother me. Okay, so number 2 is we're going to group plants by season and growth habit. And this is only something I've recently started doing. In the past, I've done stuff with my seeds and I've just kind of like organized them alphabetically. And now I'm starting to organize them by growing season, which has made things a lot easier. The best thing you can do is write it all down. Either write it all down, handwrite it all down, type it all up, give yourself a spreadsheet online, make yourself notes on your phone, whatever you need to do. Make sure you've got it all on paper or on a digital screen so you can visually see it. This is going to allow you to figure out which plants fit in which seasons. Okay, so here we're starting with group plants by season and growth habit. And you can see I have separate pages for each kind of portion of the season. I have one page for early spring, which for me is like February through April. I've got one page for late spring to summer, which is May through August. Then I have a page for fall, which is September through November, and then finally winter, which is December through January. And this makes it best and easiest for me because I can easily look and work within just one portion of the season at a time. Now, once I've got each of those pages labeled, I come in here and on my list, I write down every single potential seed that I might want to start at that time of the year. If you are unsure of what grows well in your season at that time, in your zone, at that time, you can Google. There's lots of options for it. You can chat GPT. Although if you do that, make sure that you thoroughly check it to make sure it's correct. But go ahead and put down all the possibilities that you might want to grow, not just the ones you know you want to grow. Because this, you might be surprised how you can pull from here and place it in different areas, all right? So for early spring for me, ranunculus, lettuce, snapdragon, spinach, kale, broccoli, cabbage, lots of different options. Late spring to summer is when I'm into tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, zucchini, melons, zinnias, cosmos, sunflowers, marigolds. In the fall, we're looking at bush beans, lettuce, radish, garlic, rudbeckia, salvia, Mexican sagebush. And in winter, we're looking at spinach, kale, Swiss chard, herbs, pansies, violas, sweet alyssum, dusty miller, lots of different options. Once you've got your basic list going of all the potential ones, then you can go through and choose which ones are the most important for you. And you can come over here to the side, and these are the ones that I am most interested in growing in early spring. So I put over here radishes, and then beside it I put direct sow because I know that I want to direct sow my radishes. And then I also write down I can start those late February to early March. And then over here I have lettuce, and beside it I have direct sow because I know that I want to direct sow my lettuce, and I have underneath it late February to mid-March is when I can plant it. And then finally stock. And I have seedlings because I know that stock needs a jump start. So I'll start my seedlings in December, and then I'll transplant in February and early March. I'll transplant those out. So figuring out whether or not you want to grow something by seed, direct seed, or if you want to grow seedlings inside is very important. So same thing over here, late spring to summer. I've already gone out and I've figured out what I want, such as tomatoes. And yes, I'm going to give tomatoes another try. And I want those to be seedlings. So that means I'm going to start them inside earlier, and I can plant them out mid-March to early April. There's no way that I would remember all of this information in my head. Having it written down will make my life so much easier. And doing this process before I actually plan out my raised beds makes the whole process easier, because at this point, I've got everything written down in here. All I have to do is pick and choose and plug them in where I need them. Okay, so we figured out what plants go for what seasons and which of those plants we want to grow each of the seasons. We've already figured that out for early spring, late spring, summer, fall, winter, all through that time. So now we've got them all listed. So now we basically have to decide what goes where. So number 3 on my list is to rotate plant families. This helps prevent disease and keep soil balanced. You want to rotate crops by botanical families each season. So what does that mean, Amanda? Like, I'm talking in fancy words. Basically, you don't want to plant tomatoes in the same place over and over and over and over again year after year after year. I move things around all the time. Ranunculus, zinnias, peppers, whatever it is that I'm growing, I try to mix it up and put them in different places each year. And by doing that, I'm basically keeping the disease and the insects on their toes because they can't settle in because it's not going to have the same plants each season. So they have to move around or they have to go other places to find what they need. Okay, so in regards to rotating plant families, I have an example rotation written down here just for your reference. Over here I have a column for whatever bed it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, just labeling my beds. And then over here I have across the top the different seasons, spring, summer, fall. And then I know bed number 1, I'll grow lettuce and ranunculus in there in the spring. And then in the summer, I can do tomatoes and basils. And then fall, I can do beans. And I can see all the way across, making sure that none of these families relate to one another. Same thing on bed number 2, I've got kale and snapdragons. For summer, peppers or zinnias, and then finally for fall, marigold. And by just going through and kind of figuring this out and looking at these visually to make sure that you are rotating it and that you have different botanical families in each bed, it's only going to add to the health of your garden. So a quick tip, tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, they are all from the nightshade family, and they should never follow each other in the same bed. They need to be in different beds and then flipped and rotated each season. You want to rotate them with things like legumes or like beans because those will add nitrogen back into the soil and keep your soil nice and rich. Okay, so next thing to consider as we're trying to figure out where to put things, we've already decided that we're going to rotate and not put the same botanical families in the same place year after year. Next, we want to also plan for succession planting for maximum productivity. So succession planting keeps your beds full all season long. So let me give you some examples of that. I love to do fall planted ranunculus, and they're going to be going in the month of November, and then I overwinter them in the bed. But they're done very early spring. Pretty much by the end of March, we're done with ranunculus at that point. So as soon as those ranunculus are done, I can pull all of those corms and I can go ahead and plant in a round of zinnias or basils or beans in that same bed. So I'm not giving it a lot of time in between. I'm going to go ahead and fill it with something else. Another example in the spring spring is lettuce. You might have a beautiful bed of lettuce, which does really well in cool weather, but once we get to warmer weather, it bolts and doesn't taste as good. So after the lettuce, once we get a little bit warmer weather and the lettuce isn't producing as much, we might trade it out for marigolds or celosia, which are heat-loving plants. Another example is tomatoes. Tomatoes don't last very long in my Texas Zone 8 area because they don't love the heat. So we have to start them early, and then by end of May, they're done. So after that, after tomatoes are done, we might do something like plant in some kind of other vegetable if we wanted to. We could come through with something like okra or corn, which would do really great with the heat. And then one more example, sunflowers. Maybe you start sunflowers during the summer and you're loving them, enjoying them, but as we start to get towards the fall weather, maybe we replace them with rudbeckia or mums so that we're constantly keeping our beds filled with something that is productive and useful. Okay, pro tip, you want to keep a tray of seedlings ready to go, either in pots or in seed cells in your grow space or outside, whatever works best for you. Sorry, I'm swatting the gnats away. So that you can immediately replace whatever you've harvested. If you're not sure what you want to put in, go ahead and do something simple like zinnia seedlings, all right? Those are super simple and easy to go ahead and just pop. You can start them inside and pop them in where you need it, especially if you're still trying to figure out what you want to grow in the future. Okay, so let's talk through all those details. But now, Amanda, how do you plan it all? How do you track it all? So let me show you up close in my garden journal what I like to do. It's fairly basic, but it works really great for me. So now we've got all of our information here, and now we're going to actually start planning our bed. So for example, my beds are in kind of this Tetris form. Over here I have a 3x6 bed, a 4x8 bed, and another 3x6, and it makes a zigzag pattern. And I've gone ahead and mapped it out on some graph paper. It does not have to be perfect, but I do suggest making it large and making it a nice, easy visual to look at, which is great. I went ahead and named this bed right here early spring, February through April. And I've laid out where I want different crops in those areas. For example, I have existing lisianthus, which are tender perennials. I know I already have them in this portion of this bed. I also already know that this November I'm planting my ranunculus and that they will be coming up in this bed. So go ahead and write them in and you can visually see what works best for you. Now with that being said, this same bed would have a different configuration in late spring. So let me show y'all that. So let's see, this is it. So this is the configuration, that same bed, and you can see the same zigzag right here, late spring to summer, and that's my May through August. And I've gone through and I figured out what I want to do where, right? For example, this bed had all ranunculus in early spring, and then those ranunculus, they do terrible when the heat hits. So obviously this bed would be open not too long into the spring. So I know that I can put tomatoes here and some short sunflowers. And then even with those tomatoes, I know that they don't last very long either. So over here I made a note to add sunflowers after the tomatoes are ended. So then I know that I have another layer in here. I'm succession planting. I'm making sure that my beds always have something going in them. Here's the existing lisianthus that we talked about earlier. I know that those are going to finish blooming about end of June is typically when they're about done. And I know that I can leave those plants in there and I can plant additional plants throughout. So I made a note off to the side to add marigolds after the lisianthus bloom. Same situation up here, cucumbers. They do great at the beginning of the summer, but not at the end of the summer. So I made a note that after the cucumbers, I want to add cosmos. And I know that this seems like, gosh, is she wasting a lot of paper? But seeing this large visual makes my life so much easier. Now, I've gone ahead and written all of mine in pen. You can do something simple as use little Post-it notes that say zinnias or green beans or cucumbers, and then you can put the Post-it notes and move them around and try them in different situations until you feel like everything feels more finalized. The Post-it notes allow you to move things around and see what works and what doesn't work in the spaces. Okay, I'm going to switch to another bed. So this bed right here is the one we were just talking about, right? This zigzag. But on the other side of the garden, I have this bed, which is basically a flip of that zigzag. This bed is all 8x4 beds, so it's a lot larger than the other bed. So this one is currently labeled for early spring, February through April. And so I already know that I've got fall planted snapdragons, and this whole bed will be taken up with snapdragons. I already know that I've got Dutch iris bulbs in here that are going to be coming up, and so I can't plant anything else there right now. I've also already know that I've got Veronica, perennial Veronica, but I do know that this area is open. So I chose a crop that could go in that space for early spring. Spinach should do great with the cooler weather. Here's the same bed in late spring. I know that I'll have allium coming up that I've already planted and continued snapdragons. They might go a little bit further into spring. Typically they peter out at the end of May. And then I already know that I have celosia that's self-seeded in this bed, so this bed will become celosia. Over here, I know that my Veronica will go dormant once it gets hot. That spinach won't do as well anymore, so I can fill the entire bed with sunflowers. And you just keep traveling through the seasons. Here's fall, which is September to November. I've already gone and figured out what I want to do where. And then finally winter. I know that I'll go ahead and start another round of snapdragons that I'll plant in late fall. And then over here, I wasn't sure on what I wanted to do. So I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll just give these a break and do a cover crop in order to build up that soil over the season. So this is how I gain maximum potential for my garden beds. Taking the time to write everything down, to draw out a layout, and to start figuring what goes where when. Because I'm the kind of person that if I just wait until I've ripped something out, say I've ripped all these bush beans out, and I haven't thought ahead, most likely this bed would end up sitting empty for too long, and I would not get the use that I would really need out of it. All right, and I know people are going to ask, this is my customizable planner that I get from my sister, who is the Scrappy Wife, and I will drop a link down below if you're interested in this product. This is currently the fall cover, but I'm going to be changing out for a Christmas one. This is the large format. I believe it's 8.5 by 11, so it's a really big, and I prefer that. It helps my eyes a lot. I write a lot in these, a lot of information, which I really enjoy. I put stickers in, I do a lot of planning in here, and it works really, really well for me. So if you are interested, you can check that out, check out her website. And then I'm also going to put a link in the video description that has a video that's all about my garden calendar. So you can learn all about it, how I put it together, how I use it, and such like that. Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It feels like a lot sometimes, right? But if you stick to these basics and you take the time to write these down to start off with and figure out what works best each season, and then figure out how to start lining them up in succession planting for your garden, you're good to go. Because once you start these lists and you figure out these lists, from there, you're going to have that list to build on each year after. And you're only going to learn what's going to work best for your garden as you try these things out. Now, I know there are lots of like fancy ways that you can do things online and garden planning online, but this kind of basic graph paper situation works great for me. And keeping everything in my garden planner really works well for my organization purposes. I'm actually not a very organized person in regards to my garden. I kind of just garden by the seat of my pants. However, when it comes to trying to maximize my space and work with seedlings, a little bit of organization goes a long way. So working with a situation like my garden planner helps a ton. So your raised beds do not have to rest for long. Just evolve with the seasons. With a little planning, you can grow more food, more flowers, and more joy in the same place all year long. All right, you all. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Really kind of just getting a visual of what's going on in my planner and what's kind of happening with my brain. I work with this stuff now, all right? I don't typically wait till January because, like I said, for Texas Zone 8, my growing season, I have a very long extended growing season, right? And I actually start some of my seed starting, some of it starts in December. So I like to be a little bit ahead. I also don't like to be dealing with this during the holidays. So I like to do a lot of my planning prior to Thanksgiving coming around so that I can really just focus on my family and also focus on presents and great food and watching Christmas movies and all that great stuff, focusing on that during the holiday season. And once we're through that and we come into January, I'm already set up ready to go, which is really fun and a really great start to the new year. Okay, you all, if you are interested, I am going to put some photographs of this, of my planner and how it's laid out. And I think I'm going to have a PDF as well. That will be on my Patreon community, and those will be free for all members, whether you're a free member or a paid member. If you're interested in joining my Patreon community and you're really wanting to get started on a really great growing season and really have some gardening friends, be sure to check out the community. The link is in the video description below. There's a free tier you can join under that gives you a few things that you can access. But if you want access to everything, you can join the Certified Mad Gardener tier, and that gives you access to everything, including lives, exclusive videos, photo sharing, group chats, daily posts, everything. And it's a really fun group, and I just really enjoy it because it really kind of like, I don't know, it adds a lot more personalization to my gardening experience because now I've made friends with these groups of people in Patreon, and they bring me a lot of joy on a daily basis. And maybe that's something that you're looking for as well. All right, you all, as always, she's a mad gardener or a decorator or anything else that she wants to be. Thanks, y'all.